Welcome to the Exposure Magazine podcast from the heart of the British nuclear test survivor community.
Keeping the Flame Alive, a year of milestones for the Cold War Network. By Exposure Magazine, May 2026. It has been a landmark year for the Cold War Network, with recent achievements such as formalising its legal structure and launching the first Cold War Heritage Week, both of which are key to increasing public engagement and awareness of Cold War heritage. A new chapter, becoming a community interest company. The year began with a significant structural milestone. In January 2025, the Cold War Network formally incorporated as a community interest company, CIC, a social enterprise model designed to ensure that its activities and any revenues serve the public good rather than private interests. This formalization cemented the network's identity as an organization with a clear civic purpose: to preserve and promote Britain's Cold War heritage for future generations. The network had previously emerged from a research project at Leeds Beckett University, led by Dr. Peter Robinson and Dr. Milka Ivanova, whose academic work on Cold War tourism and heritage formed the intellectual backbone of the community. By becoming a CIC, the organization created a durable governance framework, including a board of directors and an advisory panel, positioning itself to attract funding, enter partnerships, and expand its reach beyond its university origins. The network's membership has grown to over 650, including military museums, historic airfields, and heritage sites, reflecting strong community support and inspiring pride in Cold War heritage. New leadership and strategic growth. To steer this rapid expansion, the CWN has bolstered its governance structure by welcoming 4 new directors to its board. These appointments bring a wealth of specialized expertise in strategic clarity, mission-focused leadership, and digital innovation. Crucially, the board has integrated individuals who excel in structured thinking within complex environments, ensuring that the network's future direction remains highly organized as it coordinates multi-organizational national projects. The first National Cold War Heritage Week. Perhaps the boldest initiative of 2025 was the launch of the first ever National Cold War Heritage Week, held from the 16th to the 23rd of May. The week-long program brought together 15 museums, bunkers, military sites, and heritage locations across the UK, offering exclusive behind-the-scenes tours, special exhibitions, and expert-led talks dedicated to one of the most consequential and still partially secret chapters in modern British history. Sites as varied as underground bunkers and Cold War radar stations opened their doors, giving the public an opportunity to connect with the physical remains of Britain's nuclear age in ways rarely possible. The inaugural week was widely considered a success, demonstrating both public appetite for Cold War history and the network's capacity to coordinate a nationwide program at scale. Building on last year's success, the second National Cold War Heritage Week, from the 18th to the 24th of May 2026, will feature more than 25 sites, inspiring enthusiasm for future engagement with Cold War history. The grand launch of the 2026 National Cold War Heritage Week. The crown jewel of the network's current endeavours is National Cold War Heritage Week. Building heavily on the success of its inaugural campaign, the event coordinates more than 25 key heritage sites across the country to spotlight the people, technologies, and stories that defined Britain's mid-century defence strategy. The official press launch, held at the historic Yorkshire Air Museum, serves as a focal point for the network's collaborative power. The event features high-profile presentations from leading institutions, including English Heritage, which is showcasing its recent archaeological excavations of the Scarborough ROC post, as well as the York Army Museum. Adding a layer of lived experience nostalgia, the launch includes immersive historical displays featuring period props focused on the wartime broadcasting service, the emergency radio system designed to keep the public informed during a nuclear strike. The public-facing week features a diverse, nationwide program. Across the UK, visitors can step behind the blast doors for guided bunker and airbase tours, attend specialist lectures, and participate in film screenings and immersive on-site experiences. The week spans the full breadth of the conflict's social and military impact, from high-tech radar stations to the daily social histories of civil defence volunteers. Mapping a secret history. how the Cold War network is rediscovering Britain's underground past. 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Cold War is increasingly transitioning from living memory into the pages of history books. For a younger generation, the era of nuclear standoffs, regional government bunkers, and the threat of mutually assured destruction exists only as an abstract concept. Yet across the United Kingdom, the physical infrastructure of this imaginary war, from hidden Royal Observer Corps, ROC, monitoring posts to sprawling military airfields, remains quietly embedded in the landscape. Breathing new life into this fading era is the Cold War network. Having rapidly grown to over 650 members, the network, which formally established itself as a community interest company in January 2025, has launched a series of major initiatives to digitise, preserve, and publicly celebrate the UK's Cold War legacy. Recognising the importance of digital accessibility, the Cold War network has overhauled its interactive sitemap, developed with Leeds Beckett University students, featuring user-friendly icons, clear geographic markers, and detailed historical information to help the public easily explore Cold War sites. By logging onto the central hub, users can easily track down hidden Cold War geometry in their own backyards, navigating through regional defence hubs, historic aviation sites, and forgotten listening posts. National Lottery funding a major endorsement. Receiving £19,680 from the National Lottery Community Fund in November 2025, affirms the network's credibility and encourages confidence in its ongoing projects and growth. Announcing the award, Chair Dr. Peter Robinson said the funding would allow the organisation to empower volunteers, strengthen small heritage sites, and ensure that overlooked stories are shared with the public. He described it as an opportunity to support member sites in trialling storytelling approaches, particularly those that feature underrepresented voices and experiences from the Cold War period. Among the planned outputs of the funding is a Cold War engagement resource pack, a practical toolkit to be co-created with member organisations, providing templates, visual assets, activity ideas, and promotional materials to help smaller volunteer-run sites deliver tours, talks, exhibitions, and school engagement activities. A programme of free training webinars on event planning, public speaking, and accessible interpretation is also planned, aimed at helping member organisations recruit and retain volunteers. Free webinars opening the conversation. Throughout 2025, the network continued to build its reputation as an accessible and intellectually engaged organisation through its programme of free public webinars. In September, the network hosted Planning for Nuclear War in the UK, held on Microsoft Teams in the early evening to reach a wider audience. The session brought together historian Rowena Willard-Wright, who specialises in the UK's civil defence planning, and investigative journalist Duncan Campbell, whose work uncovering intelligence operations and national security issues spanned decades. Together, the speakers explored how successive British governments quietly developed contingency plans for nuclear war, stories of secret bunkers, signal stations, and the moral and political dilemmas faced by civil servants and military planners. The evening format for the webinar reflected a deliberate policy shift by the network to make its events more accessible to working members of the public. Other webinars across the year drew on the network's international dimension, including a session in November on the transformation of Matsu's Cold War battlefield cultural landscape in Taiwan, led by Chun-Shi Wang of National Taipei University, a reminder that the Cold War's physical legacy is a global phenomenon, connecting with the wider community. 2025 also saw the Cold War network deepen its ties with the enthusiast and preservation community beyond the formal heritage sector. The network took part in events such as the Chatsworth Country Fair in partnership with the Military Vehicle Trust, MVT, whose own Cold War network representative, Steve Parker, has been working to bring MVT members and their vehicles into Cold War heritage events. With over 375 MVT members connected to the period, the partnership speaks to the wide variety of people who feel a personal stake in keeping Cold War history visible and accessible. The network's monthly roundups of Cold War talks and events at institutions across the UK, from the Bodleian Library's Tradecraft exhibition on the John le Carré archive to immersive audio experiences at York Cold War Bunker, have also cemented its role as an invaluable aggregator and champion for the field. Looking ahead, the Cold War Network enters 2026 with greater resources, a larger membership, and a clearer sense of its place in the UK's heritage landscape than at any point in its history. The second National Cold War Heritage Week, now backed by national lottery funding and supported by an expanding toolkit for member organisations, promises to be a more ambitious and far-reaching event than its inaugural edition. At a moment when the history of the Cold War feels increasingly relevant, with nuclear arms control agreements under strain and the language of great power competition returning to international discourse, the work of organisations like the Cold War Network carries an urgency beyond the purely historical. The bunkers, the radar stations, the classified files now being slowly released. They are not just relics of a finished era, they are reminders of how close the world came and how much effort went into hoping it never would.
Thank you for joining us today as we bring Exposure Magazine to life. Like, subscribe and share for more great podcasts.